Every single year, up to 900,000 Americans develop a dangerous blood clot in their legs, and nearly 100,000 of them die. What is terrifying is that most of them had absolutely no idea it was even forming. No dramatic warning, no obvious sign, just a silent threat building inside their veins, day after day. But here is what almost nobody is telling you. There is a specific combination of 3 natural foods, backed by peer-reviewed research published in Thrombosis Research, that has been shown to actually dissolve clots and keep your blood flowing freely. Those 3 things are nattokinase, vitamin E, and ginger. Stay with me, because before this video is over, you are going to know exactly what these foods are, how each one works inside your body, what dose actually produces results, and one critical warning that could save your life if you are already on medication. I am going to say that again. There is a warning coming later in this video that is not optional information. It is essential. Do not skip ahead. The context matters. Let us start with the problem. Deep vein thrombosis. Most people have heard those 3 words at some point, maybe from a doctor, maybe from a news story, maybe from a friend who had a scary hospital stay. But very few people truly understand what it means, how quietly it develops, and how many people are walking around right now with a clot forming in their leg and feeling nothing unusual at all. Deep vein thrombosis, or DVT, happens when a blood clot forms in one of the deep veins of your body, most commonly in the legs. These are not the surface veins you can see. These are the deep vessels buried in your muscle tissue, carrying blood back up toward your heart and lungs. And because they are deep, the warning signs are easy to miss or dismiss. A little swelling, some warmth in one calf. Maybe a dull ache that you blame on a long day on your feet. Have you ever had unexplained leg pain, swelling, or warmth in one calf that came on without an obvious reason? This video is for you, because those symptoms can be the only signal your body sends before something far more serious happens. According to the CDC, roughly 900,000 Americans are affected by DVT and pulmonary embolism every single year. Between 60,000 and 100,000 of those people die not from the clot in the leg itself, but because a piece of that clot breaks free, travels through the bloodstream, and lodges in the lungs. That is called a pulmonary embolism, and it can kill within hours. And here is the part that should concern all of us. DVT is not just a hospital problem. It is not just something that happens to elderly patients after surgery. Sedentary desk jobs, long-haul flights, chronic dehydration, hormonal contraceptives, pregnancy, obesity, smoking, and genetic clotting disorders all dramatically increase your risk. The modern lifestyle, in other words, is almost perfectly designed to encourage clot formation. That is the problem. Now, let us talk about why the standard answers leave so many people exposed. When someone is diagnosed with a blood clot, the standard medical response is anticoagulation therapy, warfarin, heparin. Newer drugs like rivaroxaban, apixaban, dabigatran. These medications work, there is no question about that. They save lives, but they come with a significant burden. Warfarin requires regular blood monitoring to maintain a narrow therapeutic window. Too little and you are still clotting. Too much and you are at serious risk of internal bleeding. Dietary restrictions are real. Vitamin K from leafy greens can interfere with warfarin's action, meaning patients are often told to eat less spinach and kale, which creates its own nutritional problems. And for many people, this becomes a lifelong dependency with ongoing side effect management. But here is where it gets complicated, because not everyone who needs to pay attention to their clotting health is already in the prescription zone. Millions of people exist in what I call the gray zone. They have elevated fibrinogen levels, they have a family history of clotting disorders. They sit for 8 to 10 hours a day and fly 4 times a year. They have hypercoagulable tendencies showing up in lab work, but they do not yet have a diagnosed clot. Their doctor has not yet started them on medication. They have no clear guidance. What do? That is exactly where today's conversation becomes critical, because your body already has a built-in clot-dissolving system. It is called fibrinolysis, and it is working right now, every day, breaking down small clot formations before they become dangerous. The question is whether you are supporting that system or undermining it. Certain natural compounds, and we are about to go deep on 3 of them, have been shown in peer-reviewed research to enhance fibrinolytic activity. inhibit the platelet clumping that starts clot formation, and reduce the inflammatory environment that makes clots more likely. This is not folk medicine. This is biochemistry. Let me introduce you to the protocol. 3 compounds, 3 mechanisms. One goal: keeping your blood flowing the way it was designed to flow. The first is nattokinase, a powerful enzyme derived from fermented soybeans that directly degrades fibrin, the structural protein that holds blood clots together. The second is vitamin E, specifically the tocopherol and tocotrienol fractions, which inhibit platelet aggregation and protect blood vessels from the oxidative damage that makes clots more likely to form. The third is ginger zingiber officinale, one of the most well-researched anti-thrombotic spices on the planet, which works by blocking the thromboxane pathway that signals platelets to clump, and by reducing fibrinogen, the raw material your body uses to build clots in the first place. Each of these compounds works through a completely different biological mechanism. That is not a coincidence. That is the reason they are being discussed together. Research published in and cited by Thrombosis Research and related peer-reviewed cardiovascular journals has examined each of these compounds individually with meaningful results. Together, they represent a multi-pathway approach to clot prevention and fibrinolysis support that is mechanistically sound and scientifically grounded. And I want to reassure you right now, before we go deep on each one, that we are absolutely going to cover who should not use these compounds and why. That anticoagulant warning I mentioned at the start, it is coming. I have not forgotten. In fact, it is one of the most important things I am going to say in this entire video. Stay with me through the education, because the warning will make complete sense once you understand how powerful these compounds actually are. Let us start with nattokinase, and honestly, once you understand what this enzyme does, you are going to wonder why it is not discussed more widely. Nattokinase is a serine protease enzyme. That means it is a protein-cutting enzyme. It is produced during the fermentation of soybeans with a bacterium called Bacillus subtilis natto, a traditional Japanese process that creates a sticky, pungent food called natto that has been eaten in Japan for over 1,000 years. The discovery of nattokinase's specific clot-dissolving ability happened in 1980, when a Japanese researcher named Dr. Hiroyuki Sumi was working at Chicago University Medical School. He was experimenting with various natural foods to see if any of them could dissolve fibrin, the protein mesh that holds blood clots together. He placed natto directly onto a fibrin plate in a lab dish and left it at body temperature. Within 18 hours, the fibrin had been completely dissolved. That result launched decades of subsequent research. So what is fibrin exactly? When your blood clots, whether that is a healing response to a wound or a dangerous pathological clot forming inside a vein, your body converts a protein called fibrinogen into fibrin. Fibrin strands then cross-link into a tight mesh, trapping red blood cells and platelets to form the solid structure of the clot. Nattokinase directly cleaves those fibrin strands. It does not just slow down clot formation. It actively breaks down existing fibrin. That is what makes it unique. A 2009 study published in Nutrition Research demonstrated that nattokinase supplementation reduced thrombus weight in animal models and improved markers of fibrinolytic activity. Human studies have shown improvements in fibrinogen levels and euglobulin fibrinolytic activity, a key marker of your body's ability to dissolve clots following nattokinase supplementation. Now, how do you measure nattokinase potency? Through a unit called fibrinolytic units, or FU. This is the standardized measurement of the enzyme's clot-dissolving activity. The dose used in most clinical trials, the dose with the strongest evidence base, is 2,000 FU per day. Not 500, not 10,000, 2,000. That specific dose appears consistently in the research literature as the effective and well-tolerated amount. In terms of timing, nattokinase is best taken on an empty stomach or between meals. Enzyme activity can be partially blunted when the digestive system is busy processing a large meal, so morning before breakfast or mid-afternoon between meals tends to be optimal. Now, can you get nattokinase from food rather than supplements? Yes, authentic natto, the fermented soybean dish, provides roughly 1,000 to 2,000 FU per 2 to 3 ounce serving, depending on fermentation quality. Eating natto 4 to 5 times per week is a legitimate dietary strategy. But the taste and texture are intensely acquired, sticky, stringy, very pungent, and not everyone can commit to it consistently. Supplement form allows precise, consistent dosing without the palatability challenge. One important nuance I want to address. Natto also contains high amounts of vitamin K2, which is a separate nutrient with its own cardiovascular benefits related to calcium metabolism and arterial health. Vitamin K2 is not the same as vitamin K1, which is the form that interacts with warfarin. However, because natto contains both the nattokinase enzyme and significant vitamin K2, people on warfarin need to be especially careful with natto as a food. This is separate from the supplement interaction risk, and it is another reason why the warning section of this video matters so much. Before we get to vitamin E, I want to show you something that genuinely shocked me about how fast this enzyme actually works. In laboratory fibrinolysis assays, nattokinase begins breaking down fibrin clots within hours of application at physiological concentrations, not days, hours. The speed of action distinguishes it from many other natural fibrinolytic agents and helps explain why the research results have been compelling even in relatively short trial durations. That speed is also part of why the interaction risk with blood-thinning medications is so real and so serious. Now let us talk about vitamin E, and I need you to set aside whatever you think you know about this nutrient, because most of what the general public understands about vitamin E is incomplete. Vitamin E is not a single compound. It is a family of 8 related fat-soluble molecules, 4 tocopherols and 4 tocotrienols. Alpha-tocopherol is the form found in most cheap supplements, and it is the form most studied historically, but emerging cardiovascular research suggests the tocotrienol fraction may be even more significant for blood clot prevention specifically. Here is how vitamin E works against clot formation. It inhibits platelet aggregation, which is the clumping together of platelets that kicks off the entire clot-forming cascade. It does this primarily by suppressing thromboxane A2 synthesis. Thromboxane. A2 is a signaling molecule that essentially tells platelets to activate, stick together, and start forming a plug. Vitamin E reduces that signal. It also reduces platelet adhesion to blood vessel walls, which is another critical early step in pathological clot formation. Beyond platelet effects, vitamin E acts as a powerful lipid-soluble antioxidant inside cell membranes and in circulating LDL cholesterol particles. When LDL becomes oxidized, damaged by free radicals, it triggers an inflammatory response in the arterial wall that leads to plaque formation. Plaque rupture is one of the primary triggers for dangerous arterial clot events. By protecting LDL from oxidation, vitamin E helps maintain the integrity of the vascular environment where clots form. Research published in Thrombosis Research and the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition has demonstrated that vitamin E supplementation meaningfully reduces platelet aggregation in human subjects. These are not animal studies, these are human clinical data. In terms of dietary sources, wheat germ oil contains the highest natural concentration of alpha-tocopherol of any food. Sunflower seeds, almonds, avocado, and spinach are all excellent sources. For the tocotrienol fraction specifically, red palm oil and annatto seeds are the richest natural sources. For supplementation, 400 IU of mixed tocopherols per day is the dose most commonly examined in cardiovascular research with a favorable safety profile. Tocotrienol-rich fractions at 200 to 300 milligrams per day show specific synergy with nattokinase in supporting fibrinolytic activity. Here is the critical dose warning for vitamin E specifically because more is not always better. At very high doses, above 1000 IU per day, vitamin E can itself increase bleeding risk. The antiplatelet effect becomes excessive. This is why dose discipline matters with these compounds. 400 IU of mixed tocopherols is a well-supported, safe dose for most healthy adults without medication interactions. Going 5 times higher in the hope of faster results is counterproductive and potentially dangerous. Now, ginger? If nattokinase is the most powerful compound in this protocol and vitamin E is the most studied, ginger is arguably the most accessible and the easiest to incorporate daily. Zingiber officinale, common ginger root, has been used medicinally for thousands of years across Asian, Indian, and Middle Eastern traditions. But we are not here for tradition. We are here for the biochemistry. Ginger's primary active compounds are gingerols in fresh ginger and shogols in dried or cooked ginger, and these compounds inhibit thromboxane synthase. If that sounds familiar, it should. Thromboxane synthase is the enzyme that produces thromboxane A, to the same platelet-activating signal that vitamin E suppresses through a different mechanism. Ginger hits that same pathway from a different angle. Ginger also has COX-1 and COX-2 inhibitory properties. If you have heard of aspirin or ibuprofen, you already know COX inhibition. That is exactly how those drugs reduce inflammation and platelet activity. Ginger does something similar, but with a key distinction. While aspirin can irritate and damage the stomach lining over time, ginger actually has gastroprotective properties. It has been shown to reduce nausea and protect gastric mucosa while still delivering antiplatelet effects. A study published in Prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and essential fatty acids found that ginger extract significantly reduced platelet aggregation in human subjects. Data from the Journal of Medicinal Food further supports ginger's anti-thrombotic effects across multiple mechanisms. And here is the mechanism that makes ginger uniquely valuable in this 3-compound protocol. Ginger reduces fibrinogen levels. Fibrinogen, remember, is the precursor protein that gets converted into fibrin, the mesh that holds clots together. Nattokinase breaks down fibrin after it forms. Ginger reduces how much fibrinogen is available in the first place. That is upstream prevention at the molecular level. In terms of practical dosing, 1 to 3 grams of fresh or dried ginger per day is the therapeutic range supported by research. That translates to roughly a 1-inch piece of fresh ginger root grated into hot water as tea, or 250 to 500 milligrams of a standardized ginger extract in capsule form. Cooking with ginger counts add it to stir-fries, soups, smoothies. A daily cup of strong ginger tea is one of the simplest, cheapest, most evidence-supported things you can do for your vascular health. One important note, ginger's antiplatelet effect is dose-dependent. The small amount of ginger in a piece of gingerbread is not producing meaningful fibrinolytic activity. The medicinal dose range 1 to 3 grams daily is where the research-supported effects emerge. And that higher dose range is also where the interaction risk with blood-thinning medication becomes relevant. Which brings me to something I want you to fully appreciate before we get to the warning. These 3 compounds, nattokinase, vitamin E, and ginger, are not working through the same mechanism. They are working through 3 completely separate and complementary biological checkpoints in the clotting cascade. Nattokinase is fibrinolytic. It directly dismantles existing fibrin clots. Vitamin E is antiplatelet. It prevents platelets from clumping and sticking to vessel walls, stopping new clots from initiating. Ginger is dual action. It suppresses the platelet-activating thromboxane signal and reduces fibrinogen, the clot's construction material. Think of it this way. If a blood clot is like a traffic jam on a highway, nattokinase is the tow truck actively clearing the blocked lanes. Vitamin E is the traffic officer standing at the on-ramp, preventing more cars from entering the congested zone. And ginger is the urban planner who redesigned the city so fewer cars need to use that road in the first place. 3 different interventions, 3 different points of leverage, 1 coherent system. This is why the combination is more comprehensive than any single compound alone. Research into this specific 3-way combination is still emerging, but the mechanistic basis is solid. Each compound is well characterized, each pathway is well understood, and the logic of addressing clot biology from multiple angles simultaneously is the same principle that guides combination therapy in conventional medicine. These are adjunctive, preventive supports for people in the gray zone I described earlier, not emergency interventions for active, diagnosed thrombosis. That distinction is critical, and it connects directly to what I need to tell you right now. I am going to change my tone here, because what I am about to say is the most important thing in this entire video. If you have been watching casually, I need your full attention for the next few minutes. If you are currently taking any anticoagulant or antiplatelet medication, I am talking about warfarin, sold as Coumadin, heparin, rivaroxaban, sold as Xarelto, apixaban, sold as Eliquis, dabigatran, sold as Pradaxa, clopidogrel, sold as Plavix, or even daily low-dose aspirin therapy, you must not add nattokinase, high-dose vitamin E, or medicinal dose ginger to your regimen without explicit approval and active monitoring from your physician. I am not being cautious for legal reasons. I am telling you this because these natural compounds have genuine, measurable blood-thinning effects. That is the whole reason we have been talking about them. And stacking real blood-thinning compounds on top of pharmaceutical anticoagulants does not give you extra protection. It pushes your blood's clotting time into a dangerously thin range, where uncontrolled bleeding, internal or external, becomes a life-threatening possibility. Let me give you a specific scenario so this is concrete. A person on warfarin has their INR, that is the International Normalized Ratio, the measurement of how long it takes their blood to clot carefully managed, typically between 2 and 3 for most conditions. Adding 2,000 FU of nattokinase daily, on top of warfarin, could cause that INR to climb significantly above the therapeutic range. Above 4 or 5, the risk of spontaneous internal bleeding in the brain, in the gut, in the joints becomes very real. The same risk applies with the other medications I named. Natural does not mean without risk. Natural means the risk profile is different from pharmaceutical drugs, not that risk is absent. There are other groups who should be especially careful here. People with bleeding disorders like hemophilia. Anyone scheduled for surgery within the next 2 weeks, stop these compounds at least 2 weeks before any procedure. Pregnant women ginger in culinary amounts is generally considered safe in pregnancy, but medicinal doses and nattokinase supplementation should be discussed with an OB/GYN. Anyone with a history of hemorrhagic stroke bleeding into the brain. These are not hypothetical concerns. Please share this warning with anyone you know who is on blood thinners and has been exploring natural health options. This information could genuinely save their life. I know this sounds serious because it is, but knowledge is protection. And you are now one of the very few people who actually understands both the power and the risk of this protocol. That is not something to fear. That is something to act on wisely. So let us talk about how to actually implement this for those of you who are not on contraindicated medications and have spoken with your healthcare provider. Here is the practical daily protocol. Nattokinase, 2,000 FU in supplement form, taken on an empty stomach first thing in the morning before breakfast is ideal. Alternatively, eat 2 to 3 ounces of authentic fermented natto 4 to 5 times per week if you can access it and tolerate the flavor. Vitamin E, 400 IU of mixed tocopherols, taken with a fat-containing meal because it is a fat-soluble vitamin and absorption requires dietary fat. If you can find a tocotrienol-rich supplement, 200 milligrams per day is the specific fraction showing synergy with nattokinase in emerging research. Ginger. 1 cup of fresh ginger tea daily grate. A 1-inch piece of fresh root into boiling water. Steep for 10 minutes, or take 250 to 500 milligrams of standardized ginger extract with a meal. Now, these 3 compounds do not work in isolation from your broader lifestyle. Adequate hydration matters enormously. Dehydration thickens the blood and increases clot risk. 8 glasses of water per day is the minimum. Regular movement is critical. Even 10-minute walks every hour or 2 break up the blood stasis in the deep leg veins that creates the conditions for DVT. Compression socks during long flights or long sedentary periods are a simple, underused tool. Omega-3 fatty acids from fatty fish or fish oil supplements have their own meaningful anti-platelet and anti-inflammatory effects and complement this protocol well. And please set realistic expectations. These are not overnight interventions. The research shows meaningful changes in fibrinolytic activity markers over 4 to 8 weeks of consistent use. This is a long-game strategy. If possible, get a baseline fibrinogen level or dimer test through your doctor before starting and recheck after 8 weeks. Having objective data transforms guesswork into informed health management. MediMint Health is built on exactly that principle, evidence, not assumption. Before we wrap up, I want to briefly cover the other side of the equation because knowing what to add is only half the picture. Certain dietary patterns actively promote hypercoagulability, and if you are eating those foods daily, you are fighting uphill against a current. Excessive processed red meat elevates fibrinogen levels, the same precursor protein that ginger helps reduce. Trans fats and industrial seed oils promote platelet aggregation and vascular inflammation. High-sugar diets drive insulin resistance, which creates a pro-inflammatory, pro-coagulant vascular environment. Excessive alcohol disrupts normal coagulation factor balance in ways that are complex and unpredictable. On the other side, the broader anti-thrombotic diet looks like this: olive oil, fatty fish rich in EPA and DHA, dark leafy greens, berries which contain quercetin, a flavonoid with antiplatelet properties, and garlic, which contains a compound called agone, with documented fibrinolytic activity. You cannot out-supplement a pro-inflammatory diet. The 3 compounds we discussed today are amplifiers. They work best, they work significantly better inside an anti-inflammatory nutritional environment. Build that foundation first. Let me bring it all together. Deep vein thrombosis is a silent, life-threatening condition affecting nearly 1 million Americans every single year. 3 natural compounds, nattokinase at 2000 FU per day, vitamin E at 400 IU of mixed tocopherols, and ginger at 1 to 3 grams per day have scientific evidence supporting their fibrinolytic, antiplatelet, and anti-inflammatory effects on blood clot prevention. They work through 3 distinct biological pathways and are mechanistically synergistic. Critical warning, do not use these with anticoagulant or antiplatelet medications without direct physician guidance. Combine this protocol with an anti-inflammatory diet, adequate hydration, and regular movement for the best results. Expect meaningful changes over a 4 to 8 week consistent protocol. And I want to say this as clearly as I can. This information is preventive and supportive. It is not emergency treatment. If you have sudden leg swelling, chest pain, shortness of breath, or a rapid unexplained heart rate right now, do not finish this video. Call emergency services immediately. Those are the symptoms of a pulmonary embolism, and they require immediate medical attention. Your life is not worth waiting to finish a YouTube video. If this video gave you something valuable, something your doctor may not have mentioned yet, please hit the like button right now. It tells YouTube this information is worth sharing, and it helps us reach the people who genuinely need it. Subscribe to MediMint Health if you want evidence-based, natural health content delivered every week. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever tried nattokinase or ginger for cardiovascular health? What was your experience? I read every single comment. There is a link in the description to the Thrombosis Research reference we cited today. I encourage you to read it yourself. Do not take my word for it. Go to the source. Share this video with a family member who worries about their heart health or takes long flights or sits at a desk all day. It might be the most important thing you share with them this year. Stay healthy. Stay informed. I will see you in the next one. This content is for educational purposes only. Please consult your doctor before making health changes.